If you've ever been worried about not sounding confident or not looking confident when you're giving a presentation, I've got 3 tips for you that'll really help. So on this channel, you're gonna learn presentations, tips, tricks, and how-tos to give good presentations, especially if you're a non-native English speaker. So the 3 tips that I have here are related to your confidence and projecting confidence. The first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you are not speaking too quickly. You want to make sure that people are actually able to understand you. So slow down a little bit. We tend to get nervous and start speaking a lot faster when we give presentations, and then we blah, 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 blah. That is not going to sound very confident. You're going to be much more confident sounding if you speak a little bit slower. So that's the first tip. The second tip has to do with the volume of your voice. You want to speak loud enough so people can actually hear you. If you start talking really quietly like this, it's not really confident sounding. You want to make sure that you sound properly. You want to make sure that people can hear your voice properly. That means using a good, louder volume. So try to speak louder than you normally would, because then you're projecting your voice better. If you're just speaking like you normally do, it may not, and also it doesn't, but it may not project or sound as confident. You can also work on trying to have your voice come from sort of your belly, from, not just from your mouth area here, but really sort of bringing it up from your belly region to project your voice and make it a little bit louder. And the third tip that I have for you to sound more confident when giving a presentation is to make sure that you work on your intonation and your emotion. So if you're just talking and you're not really intonating your words and you don't have a lot of emotion, this does not sound very confident. It sounds very robotic and not interesting. So you want to make sure that you bring some emotion. You want to make sure that you have some intonation in your voice so that people can hear that sound and that confidence coming from you. Because when they're listening to it, it's much more difficult for them to sort of get a sense of your confidence level if your voice is sort of more monotone. It's much more confident and much more engaging for the audience if you can project some emotion and some intonation in your voice. So those were 3 tips to help you sound more confident. The first one is to speak more slowly. The second is to speak louder and more clearly. And the third one is to use more emotion and intonation in your voice. Hopefully you found those tips helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Secondly, let's have a look at positioning yourself naturally. Now, this really applies to anyone that's using a webcam and a laptop, because we've all seen this angle, and apologies if that's what you're doing at the minute, but it's not a good angle looking up like this. And simply by placing your laptop on a box or some books, you can get an instant improvement. That looks better, doesn't it? If you're using a phone, then attach it to a USB cable and put it on a little tripod like this. Again, it can really make a difference, and it will just keep it still and it will hold it hopefully at eye level. And if you've been told that you want to be looking up to lose those wrinkles, I disagree with it. It's not natural seeing you looking up to me like this or me looking down to you. I want to connect with you, and I want this to be at eye level as if we were just sitting in front of each other. And if you're worried about the chins appearing under here, then lean forward a bit and maybe not be slouching back. But if you're on your webcam or you're using a camera, just try and get that lined up as well. So regardless of what you're on, we're aiming for a nice eye level shot through here. Then zoom and crop. Most webcams tend to be a wide angle, and they can be distorted at the edges as well. And they're picking up a lot of that background behind you. One of the benefits of upgrading to a camera like I'm using here is not only the quality improvement, but also it means I've got some lenses that I can choose between. And as I choose a wide angle one or a close in one, it will make a difference of what's going on behind and how much of that space you can see. And then I like this tight crop that you see here. You're not seeing a full height, you're not seeing my desk. This feels nice, and actually I have a lot of people say it really is like you're just sitting there in front of me. And that's what we're trying to achieve when we're on these Zoom calls. Now, with a detached webcam, you're just bringing it in closer to get closer in like this, or moving it back further to get more of the shot in. Same will be true with your laptop, just sliding it forwards and back to adjust how much you can see in here. And then once you've set that up and you're thinking, yeah, that looks good, where do we actually sit within this frame? If you're sitting up too high, that's going to look awkward and uncomfortable. And if you're sitting down low, that just looks weird, doesn't it? think of a grid being over the frame here, and ideally you want to have your eyes on this top third line here, and aim for having a small bit of space just above your head, but no more than that. So have a go at that. All these little things, one at a time, are going to start improving the look that you're getting there. Now let's move on to lighting. And we're really talking about some complementary lighting here, some additional lighting that you're putting in. If at the minute you're just using room lights, I encourage you to get something like this as a light for your filming. Certainly if this is something that you're doing professionally, this is important, this is your business that you're doing. And don't let people overcomplicate this. You don't need to have a 3-point lighting kit. I've literally, as you can see, just got one light here in front of me. And sometimes I have one up on the ceiling just pointing back to cut me out a bit really, because I have a dark background. If I'd got a lighter wall, I wouldn't need to have that light behind me. So I really am using this, and this one light is doing all the work. You can see that when I turn this light off, you realize what's going on in the rest of the room. And you might say, well, why have you got something as big as that? Honestly, this lighting, the bigger you can get the light, the softer it will be. If I just got a very small light in front of me, it's going to create shadows, it's going to cause reflections, and you're going to see the frames of my glasses down here. Big, soft light is the most flattering light that you can have for this kind of work. And might seem obvious, but I ought to spell it out. This light needs to be in front of you. But if you wear glasses, you're going to have to either lift it up a bit or move it to the sides. And look how good that lighting is. This will cost you about $200 for the light and for the softbox that's on the front of it. So it's not crazy money, and for the impact and the ease of use, it is definitely well worth the investment. And I encourage you actually to keep your other lights on in the room. Don't go turning everything off and relying on this one light. You're going to have a real contrast, and it's going to be hard to balance this. So I tend to say, have the room lit as you would if somebody was coming to meet you in person. You wouldn't sit in a really dark room. You'd just have your typical room lights on, and then we use this one in front of us just to fill in the shadows and things, which probably you're going to find otherwise. And talking of shadows and things, having a light directly above you is a real no-no. It's going to cause massive shadows under your eyes, under your chin and things. So try and reposition yourself so that you haven't got a light straight above you. Ideally, rather than coming back and having it coming down in front, you'd be better off having it going down the back of you, so maybe just pushing things forwards. Now, somebody's going to be thinking, should we be using natural light? It's a sunny day outside, why don't we use that? And it really does depend on the weather and how long your meeting's going to be. If the weather's consistent, then sure, window light is nice and it's soft, it'll fill the whole room up, but avoid sitting directly in that light coming in, as it's going to cause some shadows and really strong contrast. But a nice bright room can look lovely. Where it can really turn against you is if it's a cloudy day and one minute you've got this bright sun out there and the next minute it's all just gone dark because a cloud's come across and blocked the sun. So I recommend that you stick your head outside, and if it's questionable, just pull the curtains and treat it as if it were evening. Lighting becomes a real problem when you wear glasses, but don't worry about it. I know about this, I got some great tips, and we're sharing that in another video that I'll link to in the description below. And actually, I realize I haven't told you yet that there's a full blog post that sits alongside this video, giving you all the links to those videos that I'm going to keep mentioning. Plus, you'll see that we've created a free Zoom guide with all our tips and tricks. You're going to find that over there too. I'll put a link down in the description for you. So, lighting, tick. What about that background? If you've got Zoom open on your computer, tell me, what's going on back there? If it's not looking great back there, can you rearrange the office a bit to give you a better view? I would try to avoid having a doorway or a window back there if possible, and really to try to shoot towards a plain wall. And then if you want to introduce props, bookshelves, things on the wall, you can do it bit by bit from there. The aim with this background is that we really don't want it to be distracting our viewers, and it wants to present you as a professional. So you might be having to work out of a bedroom, but we don't have to see the bed. Remember, we only get to see that small area. You can't see what else is going on in the rest of the room here. So it might be that you need to get a bit creative and find another bit of space in your room that you hadn't considered. And maybe for the sake of shifting a few things around, it would be a good idea and give you a really nice set background behind you. Now, if you're on a laptop, one cool trick is to pick it up and actually walk around the room and try and find a better location. Think outside the box a bit, and ideally it wants to be somewhere that you can easily return to, or better still, where you can set up a permanent desk situation there. When you've found somewhere and you're starting to think about propping it out, make sure to stay on brand. Imagine you're meeting somebody in real life. What kind of things would you have on your desk, would you have in the room around you that you'd be proud of and you think really kind of fits with the conversation that you're having? I also think Pinterest is a really great place to go and put some ideas together of backgrounds that you think, oh, that would look really nice behind me. Then when you've come up with some ideas and you're getting ready to set this up, I try to give yourself ideally about 5 to 6 foot minimum between where you're sitting and that background behind you. It'll help separate you, it'll blur it a bit, really depends on what camera or webcam you're using, and it will also make sure that you're not casting any shadows across there as well. And I know I'm a little bit OCD, I do like things nice and tidy and put away, but even if you're not, keep your filming space tidy and ready to go. The last thing you don't want to be doing is just about to go onto your Zoom call and you go, oh no, hadn't spotted that in the background, let me go and fix it. It's just stress that none of us need. Now, there are of course 2 alternatives to having to have a nice tidy background. Firstly, you can blur the background. Zoom added a handy button for this. Right down here next to stop video is a little arrow and blur my background appears. And look at it, there it is. All of a sudden, magically, our background and all that mess behind us has gone. Personally, I'm not a fan. And if anything, this leads to more distraction as I'm trying to imagine what's actually going on back there. And unless you're using a good camera, it's not going to do a very believable job anyway. Or the second option that Zoom helps us with, still down here, is to choose a virtual background. So if you fancy sitting in front of the Golden Gate Bridge down here in San Francisco, we can do that if we want to. Maybe you're fancying a nice beach scene behind you or the Northern Lights. You can actually bring an image of your own into this if you want to. Personally, again, I'm thinking this probably isn't going to be very professional for most of you, so I tend to turn this off. Again, it really does make a difference if you're working on a good camera like this, or if you've got quite a grainy webcam, that's going to look even worse. Now, if you're interested in those 2 features, blur in the background or bringing in an image behind you, we've covered them in separate videos that, again, you're going to find down in the description. Now, technically, this next one isn't helping you look good on Zoom, but we've got to talk about audio. To have all this looking lovely and not improve the audio would be a huge mistake. As a minimum, I recommend that you use a USB mic that you can plug in externally, have it nice and close in front of you. Something like the Blue Yeti is very popular. And do make sure then that down here in Zoom, you come up to select a microphone and make sure that you are selecting the right one. And of course, we've got another video specifically helping you to upgrade your audio. So again, it's down in the description. Now, time for some makeup, potentially. If, like me, or you look on camera and you think, wow, my head looks really shiny up there, you can either use something like this transparent finishing powder that's a matte finish, and you just brush it on and it will just take that shine off you. It's the kind of thing that just gets flicked over somebody who's going on TV doing an interview or a news broadcast or whatever it be. So it's pretty standard for folk to just put a bit of this on. Just be careful because you're going to look like a snowman if you go a bit thick with it. And I realize that some of you wear makeup that deliberately has a gloss to it. I don't know the correct term. And while that might look lovely when you're out and about and meeting your friends, it's really not good on camera. We really want to get a matte finish on here and not have anything that it will reflect. Now, thankfully, rather than needing to brush on any of this makeup, I discovered these little skin wipes that you can get, and I'm actually on my last one. But you can just wipe this across your head here like this, and I find that this does a really good job of just taking off some grease and taking off that shine. It definitely makes a big difference. Now, we've got some virtual makeup here in Zoom. Touch Up My Appearance is something that you'll find down here under your video settings. So if we click down here, video settings, and what you'll see is Touch Up My Appearance. And what it's going to do is virtually soften our skin. And it's something that some cameras now have as well. This Sony ZV-10 that we've got has this feature built into it too, and it's a little bit more careful than what it is here in Zoom. But let me tick it on and let's have a look at what happens. We've got a slider at the side so we can do minimal. There's nothing applied here at the minute, and then we can go all the way to the extreme, and look at that, it's just got rid of all of those wrinkles. Personally, I don't like this and I don't want you to be using it. I don't find it believable. I find it fake. And it's a bit like that blurry background. I'd rather just see your face here right in front of me, as if we were meeting in real life. There would be no pressure or no feeling like, oh no, I've got to put something on. We would just meet and talk. So I would really encourage you to try and not be using this and just be showing up as your authentic self. But if you do want to have a go of it, and I can't convince you otherwise, then please just have a go with this slider and maybe do again a little record only here in Zoom. And if you got a good friend who you trust their opinion, why don't you say to them, hey, look, what do you think? Am I better with this or without it? So you have been warned. I don't want to see you all out there with these plastic looking faces. Now, while we're talking about appearance, what are we actually going to wear? I want you to dress for success. Just because you're at home rather than sitting in a corporate office doesn't mean you should be any less professional. So get up, take a shower, get dressed, and come to this as if you were about to go to the office or meet a client in person, at least on the top half anyway. So with all the camera upgraded or at least repositioned and the background improved and you're looking sharp, I want you to train yourself to look at the camera as much as possible. And we all struggle with this. It's totally natural to want to look down at people's faces in front of us rather than looking into a camera. But while you're looking down here and smiling away at them and talking like this, they're totally missing the eye contact with you. Certainly at points when you're speaking, try to focus straight on the camera and you'll be surprised how well you can get used to using your peripheral vision and seeing what's going on down here on your monitor or wherever it is. Or if you're using a camera, we've got a great tutorial on how to use a teleprompter like I'm doing right here, where you can view your guests in front of you, and actually as you're looking at them, you're also looking straight down the lens. So this is a real win. Again, we'll link to that one down below. And here's another quick tip for you. If you're using your camera or your webcam just above your monitor, then instead of having your Zoom window full screen down here, why don't you bring it right to the top of your monitor and minimize it even, and just put it right up there so it's actually much closer that when I look at my lens or look back down here, there's not as big a gap of my eyes traveling away as it would be if I'm looking down here. You can see on that recording there the difference of where my eye's going just by lifting that up or having it back down here.
5 top tips for how to be more confident on camera, starting with tip number 1, which is to recognize that there's like different modes of thinking about the camera. And this is a bit of a mindset thing that I found really helpful. And that's like, there's 2 ways of thinking about the camera. Firstly, there is the coffee mode, and secondly, there is the presenter mode. So in coffee mode, what I'm imagining is that the camera is a friend of mine who I'm having coffee with. So this is the sort of vibe that I might talk to if I'm doing coffee mode. You know, this is more appropriate for a Zoom presentation, or if it's a negotiation with someone, or it's like a sales thing. I'm not necessarily going to be over the top and presentery about it. I'm going to be speaking to them as if I'm having coffee with a friend. And so this is the mode that I go into when I speak to a camera, like right now. Or if, for example, I'm doing a YouTube video where I'm speaking from the heart about something that's somewhat difficult to talk about, or that's a little bit deep, then I'll go into coffee mode when I'm speaking to the camera. And then the second mode that I personally find useful is a bit more presenter mode. And that is, you know, speaks to the idea that generally when you're speaking on a camera, you lose out on 2 points of charisma out of 10. So let's say, I don't know, you're talking at a 5 out of 10 in terms of like energy level. When you're speaking to a camera and it's coming across to the other person, that comes across as if it's a 3 out of 10 in charisma. And so if you want to speak on camera as if you're speaking naturally, often you do have to ramp things up slightly in real life. And so my presenter mode of speaking, the way I'm speaking to the camera right now, is a bit more like 6.5, 7 out of 10 in terms of my energy levels, but hopefully that comes across as fairly natural rather than like absurdly, you know, energetic, like it probably does in real life right now, but hopefully on the camera it sounds reasonable. And so the mental model I have for this is I'm giving a kind of presentation to 3 or 4 medical students. That tends to be the model I have in my head, and you can figure out for you whatever model works for you. But I think thinking of the camera in these 2 different modes, coffee mode, like it's a little bit more chill, a little bit low energy, versus presenter mode, a little bit higher energy, especially if you're doing a presentation. Maybe if you're doing an interview, that might be more appropriate. Tip number 2 for speaking on camera is to embrace imperfection. One mistake that I see with a lot of people, a lot of students from my part-time YouTuber Academy, you can sign up to the waiting list down below, but one mistake I see a lot of newbies to cameras is that they think they have to put on some kind of personality. Like, you know, I am speaking like a BBC presenter from the 1950s, and I'm going to talk about camera's confidence in this way, and it just becomes a thing that sounds very fake, especially now we're all so used to seeing other people on camera. It's a bit weird. You can kind of tell when someone is not really being themselves. And so tip number 2 is to really embrace the imperfection and to channel your own personality. Don't try and necessarily put on a personality of someone else, although in the course we do talk about strategies like imitating other people's styles and using that to figure out your own. But broadly, if you can allow your own authentic self to shine through, so maybe when you're giving a presentation, you're using jokes and terminology and phrases that you would use in real life. You don't have to be all stuffy about it. You don't have to kind of over-professionalize yourself in an attempt to sound more engaging, because generally leaning more towards the casual end of the spectrum, so generally how we talk in real life, generally that comes across in a lot more of an engaging way to an audience, rather than if you dial up the professionalism because you've got to be professional in a work presentation. Tip number 3 for being more confident on camera is to speak through a smile. Now this is a great strategy. Basically, you can be saying anything, but if you say it with a smile on your face, it just sounds as if you're more confident and more engaged with the thing. So if I didn't have the smile on my face, I could be talking like this, I could be kind of varying my intonation, I could be talking hopefully quite charismatically and quite confidently. But now if I say exactly the same thing with a smile on my face, now it's just like I'm infused with more energy and I just feel a lot more engaged and I feel a lot more confident, and hopefully that comes across, and all I've done is just plastered a bit of a smile on my face. It feels really fake initially, it feels like absolutely bizarre. If you're not used to kind of speaking through a smile, the muscles around the cheeks start to hurt, all that kind of stuff, but it really genuinely does come across as way more engaging and way more confident, and it also bleeds into your own energy levels as well. Tip number 4 for being more confident on camera is body language. Now, if you like, it's really interesting to analyze kind of YouTubers who've been on the platform for absolutely ages. 2 really good examples of this are Marques Brownlee and Mr. Who's the Boss, both huge tech YouTubers, and they've been on YouTube for I think like 10 years at this point. So you can see what their camera confidence was like at the beginning and what it's like now. And they're both radically different camera presences from 10 years ago versus now. But you'll see that one of the major changes, one of the major evolutions of most people becoming more confident on camera is that they start to use their hands and their body a little bit more. This is not to say you have to do this sort of weird kind of stuff, but generally I find that kind of moving my hands around this general zone makes me come across as a lot more confident than if, for example, my hands were static. Because with my hands static, whatever I'm kind of doing, especially if I'm like fidgeting and stuff, it just comes across as a little bit weird. If my hands are here, there's a limitation to the amount of energy that I can exude and the level of comfort that I feel, like see, even then, like, and the level of comfort I feel when I'm speaking on camera. But if I allow myself to relax a little bit, if I kind of relax my shoulders, if I use a little bit more body language, especially, elbows down here, and then gesturing in this kind of zone, hopefully this comes across as a little bit more confident, a little bit more natural, and a little bit more engaging than it would be if I wasn't using my hands at all. Tip number 5 is to warm up. Now, something that I do before every filming session is that I generally put on some music on Spotify on my Amazon Echo behind me, and I will generally sing along to the song. 'Cause your time's coming around, don't stop crying. Don't stop, never give up. And I'm doing that while I'm setting up the camera, while I'm setting up Zoom. Like if it's a particularly high stakes thing, like a Zoom presentation, or if I'm filming a video, I'll just get myself into more of a high level energy zone. And for me personally, I do that by singing along. You can see there's Tony Robbins videos on YouTube where he has a whole full body warm up where he like jumps around and does a little hop, does a little spin. And all of these things are just different strategies to get us into the higher energy zone that we want to be in, mostly if we're trying to be a little bit more confident on camera.
I often get asked to speak at conferences, and whenever I do, I notice something. If there's a lectern available, speakers will use it. No matter how well they know their talk, and regardless of whether they actually need the microphone that might be attached to the lectern, if the lectern's available, speakers will use it, particularly if the speaker that went just before used it. Mark my words, the lectern is not your friend. As you're no doubt picking up, body language is all about the non-verbal signals we give off. It's the unspoken language. With that in mind, let me ask you this. What underlying message does this communicate? Aside from being a bit headmistressy, the underlying message is that I want to distance myself from you, the audience. It also suggests that perhaps I'm not confident enough to come out from behind the lectern. I'm using it to hide behind. So, when given the option, how should you use a lectern? Before we answer that question, we're going to take a slight sidestep. As the speaker, in most contexts, you can choose the speaking conditions that work for you, which means, generally speaking, you don't have to go along with the default setup. Chances are it was arranged by someone that doesn't necessarily understand what works best for speakers. So, ahead of time, get in touch with the organiser and specify what you want as part of your setup. Handheld or lapel microphone, slides or no slides, audience seating arrangements. Obviously, you don't want to be unreasonable with your requests. They probably can't change things like the venue, and particularly if they're paying you to speak, the organiser would expect you to make your preferences known. Even if you do specify your preferred setup, occasionally you'll turn up and it won't be what you asked for. This is why it's so important to arrive early to any speaking gig. The last thing you want is being ill-equipped and in a state of stress when you get up to speak. Earlier this year, I was speaking at a conference. I'd had the tech run through the previous day, everything was fine, but one thing I forgot to consider was that I was speaking immediately after another speaker who had different setup requirements to me. Rather than just use the setup she had, I took 2 or 3 minutes to adjust the setup to suit me. This involved moving the lectern from its dark corner where, you guessed it, all other speakers had been presenting from until this point. I moved the lectern into the middle of the speaking area, but set slightly back. I then put my notes on the lectern, took a step out, away from it. I grabbed a handheld microphone, again, not something anyone had thought to do until this point, and then I began my presentation. Not only was everything set to how I liked, but the audience were immediately engaged because someone, thank goodness, was doing something different. I had their attention. Which brings me back to the lectern. The simple principle here is get out from behind it. And in doing so, you'll give yourself the freedom to move with purpose and gesture as you normally would. If you don't need notes, then ensure the lectern is completely out of your way. If you do need notes, then pop them on the lectern, but don't appear awkward or embarrassed when you have to consult them. I often see people do this, as if they don't want the audience to know they had notes in the first place. Instead, walk over to the lectern, review, and continue walking away from the lectern as you do. To recap, the lectern is not your friend. At the most, it is there to hold your notes and water. Specify your preferred setup with the organiser ahead of time and arrive early to ensure everything is arranged the way it should be.